Here's why your team is not sharing the technical content that you are creating, and why you're missing out on more reach, happier colleagues, and more trust as the result. So here's how the traditional content workflow for technical content looks like. You start on the left-hand side with an SEO roadmap or something similar, and then the content team creates an article or works with a freelance writer or agency to create that article that gets published on the website. And then the content team is asking the colleagues to share that piece on their kind of social media or just kind of with people that they know or things like that. And then they maybe also are asking, practically the CEO to share that a bit and kind of do some thought leadership around the topic. And the problem is that the colleagues don't really, the content team asks them to share, but they don't really share. And then the CEO is getting asked to share, and they also don't really share. And a lot of content teams are just confused about why this is happening, right? Is they kind of want to help the team build kind of more visibility online. They want to get more links back to their articles. They want to get all of the benefits of social sharing, and they are not getting it. Yes. So here is why this is happening. In this workflow, these steps around the SEO roadmap, content team actually creating the piece and publishing the piece, none of this usually asks for team input. Yes. And as a result of this, what happens is people don't really know kind of what they're going to share, or they have never seen it before. The request comes in to share it. They maybe disagree with things which are being said in the articles. Maybe those things are saying things incorrectly, kind of objectively incorrectly. All of that could be happening, right? And a lot of this is happening due to all of this kind of process not really asking for any kind of input from the team. Yeah. So you can kind of pretty trivially say, okay, I'm going to try and fix it, and I'm going to add a review. Yeah, we're going to keep mostly the same process with the SEO roadmap and content team creating pieces. And then, we're just going to have a colleague kind of have a look and review, yeah, and put a little stamp of approval on it. And this is better because the colleague that you're going to ask to review, they are now more likely to share. We know that this is true. We have tried it many times. We have been running a technical content workflow, not this one, but the one I will show below, for about 8 years now. And this is consistently kind of, this was the initial kind of trivial fix that we implemented that made things better. However, this didn't fully solve the problem. Yes, the rest of the organization, even though this colleague may share, the rest of the organization still will not share. And then most organizations actually end up getting stuck in this mode where they're kind of doing this review by the colleague and then one person is sharing, or they're getting now a little bit of social sharing, but they are not getting the level of social impact that they were expecting. Yes, and they don't really understand what to do with this. So if we want to solve this properly, let's have a look at the principles that are causing this behavior, right? The lack of behavior that the content team wants. People generally are more comfortable sharing things that they're part of. Yes. So if, for example, if you are asking a colleague to share something that they had no idea existed before, right, and you're just kind of coming in and asking them to send it, okay, they can do it, once or twice based on how much they trust you, how much of you're asking them for a favor, basically. Okay, they will do it. But in terms of consistent sharing, you're kind of you're slowly exhausting your social capital with them, right? And so you are not going to be able to ask them to do it so consistently anymore. The second principle is, does it help them meet their goals better? If yes, they will share. Yes, the idea is that if there's a piece, for example, that solves a problem for your internal colleague, for example, a sales person frequently hears a specific question on a technical sales call that they are not able to answer themselves, and you are giving them a content piece that they can send in this situation. Okay, that would be that is kind of a direct plug into their problem, right? And that is going to make it much more likely for them to share that piece. But if you are not kind of solving those kinds of problems, some people will not share. And then the third piece is, does it increase the collective status or decrease it? If you're asking your colleagues to share something that is objectively not very good, yeah, for example, you have kind of very quickly drafted a piece with AI, and it is very obvious that this is a piece that's been drafted with AI. Maybe the imagery is not very good, maybe the writing is not very good, and you're still asking people to share. okay, again, they will maybe do it because they trust you and they want to help you out. Maybe they will do it a little bit, but it's kind of going to be a little bit iffy, right? Over time, even though they may understand that this is kind of something that you really, really need to meet your goals. This is going to cause them to lose their social capital a bit, yeah, because other people in their networks will see that they're sharing stuff that is maybe not very good, and therefore they will not do so much of it in the long term. And what you want is for them to do it long term and to actually want to do it. So, how do you properly solve this based on these principles, right? That people are sharing what they are a part of, people are sharing what helps them meet their goals, and people are sharing what increases the collective status. You need to ask for input early, yes, to help people be really part of the process and help them feel like they're fully part of that content creation process. You need to align what you're doing with the goals of the individuals. Yeah, so not just teams or company goals, but with the goals of the individuals. And then you need to create things that increase collective status. Yes, what that means is kind of creating really high quality stuff, kind of visually impressive, narratively impressive, kind of all of those things, right? The better it's going to be, the more likely it is that people will share. And how do you actually implement that in the actual content creation process? Yes. So instead of driving everything just by the SEO roadmap, and SEO roadmap is important, don't get me wrong, but you need to switch that origination of the ideas into a combination of SEO roadmap, customer insights, sales team insights, customer success team insights in terms of like customer conversations, what is important to the customers, things like CEO's understanding of the market, priorities of different teams, and probably you can add more things here that you want to consider. But basically, all of this needs to go into the content ideation and planning phase together. Yes, not just SEO roadmap, but all of these other things as well. And then what you if you really want to be good at this, then you need to figure out the way to combine the SEO roadmap with these insights in a way that kind of works both for the insights and for the SEO value that you're looking for. And then you're putting that into the kind of content ideation phase. And then what you're going to do is, instead of just asking the colleague to review at the end, how we did it, kind of how we showed you before, you will actually ask the colleague ahead of time. When you're still at the planning phases, you are going to go and talk to the colleague, potentially multiple colleagues, depending on how important the piece is. But most organizations, tend to prefer just having one person that they can talk to, so that they avoid kind of the too many cooks in the kitchen situation. And then they're going to talk to this person even before the process starts. And what this interview is going to get them is, it's going to let the subject matter expert, in this case could be an engineer or could be a customer success person, sales engineer, anyone really who is suitable for this. They're going to share their view of the market. They're going to share their opinion. They're going to share things that they actually believe on this topic. And then the content team is going to create an outline based on that. And they're going to share it back to the SME to add comments and approve. So what this is going to do is, they're going to create an outline and they're going to, let's say, bullet points, basically. And then the subject matter expert will be able to confirm that the content team actually understood what they're trying to say, and they're going to shape it into a piece that is going to make logical sense to them. Okay, they approve. Then the next phase is going to be, the content team actually creates the draft based on this. So the content team no longer works from just a blank page or just the SEO roadmap. They're working from an outline that was specifically approved by the SME, that includes all the different elements that they originally wanted from all of these different planning phases. And with that draft, they're going to go back to the SME, who's still going to kind of have a look at it and make sure that everything actually closely enough resembles the outline and the points that they had originally. And they are going to approve it. And what that means is, when this gets published on the site, potentially it can carry the subject matter expert's byline. Yeah, so all the content is no longer created by content team. Yeah, as in like the thing on the website is no longer going to say just created by whatever company team. Yeah, which has no personality, has no authority value, things like that. It's going to be assigned to a specific person whose thoughts actually helped create that entire piece. Yes, helped shape it and helped really explain the different details. And they the subject matter expert really worked quite a bit in this process. And they're usually very happy to take the byline at that point, because it is kind of their article. The content team did most of the work, obviously, to do the heavy lifting, because the subject matter expert probably has a full-time job, obviously, right? They're a solutions engineer or a sales engineer or a software engineer, or they're the CEO, right? They have other things that they need to be doing. But this content team process basically took their thoughts and made it into an article. And what that means is they're much, much more likely to actually share it because it's almost like an article that they wrote, or perhaps better that they what they could have, or very likely better than what they could have written themselves, because the content team probably kind of did a very detailed job on the writing, probably added some visuals, made the story really compelling, that kind of thing. Yes, and kind of using the main points that the SME shared. But then what is very important is that others in the organization are much more willing to promote this as well, because now this is assigned to a specific person. They want to support this colleague, not just the content team. They want to also share things which are going to be aligned with their team priorities. And if you're understanding the priorities of different teams here, then you're going to do a pretty good job on this. And therefore, for example, if you're giving something to the sales team that they know is like a super requested for kind of article or piece of information, then of course they're going to share. And then the CEO is going to be more willing to promote, because all of this is aligned with company priorities and the vision and the input, kind of their input. And all of this is going to just make it easier for them to get their points across on social media or elsewhere and support the other things that they may be talking about. So basically, with all of these principles, yes, we have made a change to the content process that basically says, okay, you need to get input early. You need to align this input with the individuals that work at the company, as well as the priorities of different teams, the CEO's understanding of the market. And then if you're working on things which are going to increase the collective status, so things which are like really impressive, things which are really well made, well written, well designed, and so on, then people are going to be much, much more likely to share it compared to what you could have had before. And by the way, this is the process. This is the exact process that we ran for technical software companies. This is, roughly the shape of the most recent iteration of the process that we're currently using. And you can get in touch with me if you would like us to help you set this up in your own organization, or even if you would like us to run it for you.